Hey Soul Center, I'm back with a week 2 update. I've been having an absolute blast as I expected, and it's just great to be back. Week 2 started off the week with an incredible experience. Definitely the highlight of the trip so far was being able to attend a rhino dehorning. Um, the anti-poaching unit will conduct these rhino dehornings in order to, in theory, save the rhinos from poaching. Because when you're trimming down the rhino horn to a safe level where it's not affecting the animal, you're basically disincentivizing poachers from coming in to like poaching the horn and then killing the animal. So it really amps up the risk for poachers to come in when the reward is minimal. And basically, this is done every 15 to 24 months, kind of whatever the rangers feel fit, and when they feel like there's the most threats. And so, yeah, that was just amazing to experience. And it was awesome to see how the anti-poaching unit does it and how it not just affects them, but it affects the rest of the reserve as well. And it's a whole team effort. Everybody's in on the job. We're all hunting down this rhino. Then you carefully sedate it, make sure it's not steered into any trees or areas that can harm itself. And then once you get there, you're measuring the horn, taking its vitals and everything, and then you trim down the horn very safely to a point where it's not going to affect the animal. And basically, like a fingernail, the rhino horn is made out of keratin and really dense microfibers, and so the horn will grow back, which is a very big advantage to dehorning. But unfortunately, the environment of poaching has come to such a drastic increase that we have to dehorn these animals and take away their pride to be able to protect them. And so that's a problem that I really want to look into as well while I'm here, and that's my plan to do when I'm working with the rangers is looking into how dehorning really affects the behavior of the rhinos, and how it affects their way to not only protect themselves but to protect their youth, and see if the rangers have noticed anything over the last 10 or so years that they've started to dehorn in private game reserves. So here at Royal Malawan, the rangers are some of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. And so they really have the best insights on how these animals are being affected and whether it's really worth the procedure in order to save them. There haven't been too many studies on it, and especially not with these caliber of rangers. So I'm interested to hear what they have to say while I'm working with them next week. Another kind of thing I learned at the dehorning was how it's just so easy for poachers to be able to come in and kill these animals for their horns with really no risk to them unless they're actually caught in the action. There are so many firearm laws in South Africa that give poachers the edge. For example, the anti-poaching unit basically has to wait for them to be shot at, or they have to claim self-defense in order to be able to shoot a poacher, or basically they're playing reactive. They're in the reaction mode instead, when the poachers can kind of just waltz in, and then if you get caught and you don't have anything on you, you're just going to get charged for firearm possession and trespassing, when everybody knows they're coming in to poach. So it's a very interesting field and dynamic of how these poachers are just allowed to kind of walk into the reserves with really just a slap on the wrist unless they get caught with the actual rhino horn on them. So that was super interesting, and the dehorning was such an amazing experience, and such a cool thing to see. It's always been on my bucket list, and it was awesome to see. That was that. And then I also attended a talk with some conservationists, and they were talking about how the vulture population in Kruger National Park has really taken a decline due to poisoning. So poachers will come in and kind of like what I looked for last week with the snares. They will snare animals and then come back, check on them, and when they're dead, they'll sprinkle some poison onto these animals. And so naturally, you've got hyenas, lions, other predators, other carnivores that come to scavenge off this animal, and vultures are a huge proponent of that. So vultures will come in, swarm the carcass, kind of take whatever they want, and get out. But when they're being poisoned, you're seeing a massive drop in the vulture population, and it's really, they're at a very bad spot. And so the poachers are poisoning these animals to basically put into the trade. So you go, not necessarily for vultures. Vultures will get put into the trade for like jewelry and their bones and that kind of stuff. It's all kind of mixed into this pseudoscience that is the same with rhino horn. But then they're also trying to mix in the meat trade with like leopard, lion, hyena, that kind of stuff, like their bones, different parts of their body. Lion paws are really expensive in trade. And so these poachers are coming in and really taking whatever they can. And by byproduct, these vultures are getting put to death, which is really unfortunate and really sad. And interestingly, the vultures have always been a telltale sign of poaching. When you see a massive cluster of vultures, you know something's wrong. Because when there's a dead animal, or say a lion kills a buffalo, you'll have a few, but when a rhino or an elephant dies, there's massive amounts of vultures in the area, and that's always a telltale sign of when an animal's died unexpectedly, because they'll get there first. Whereas if it's a natural kill, then the lions will be protecting their carcass, and then they'll give it to the vultures whenever they're done with it. So yeah, that was super interesting to learn about, and hopefully next week I'll be able to attend one of EWT's, who's the Endangered Wildlife Trust, a big global organization who I did the snare sweep with. They're doing they'll be catching some vultures, and basically this one lady is studying diseases throughout vultures, and so it'll be really cool to see that and see how vultures are reacting to the situation, and learn more about their population decline, because it's all looped in and affected, like I've learned with everything here. Like, poaching affects everything, unfortunately, and it's just a really sad scenario that this country is in, and most of Africa is in with their wildlife. Another interesting update was last Wednesday was South Africa's election day, which was super cool to see, and I learned a lot about the political landscape and how South Africa has really been bound to corruption for the last 20-25 years. The same party was elected this year that's been in charge for the last 25 years, and they've gotten caught embezzling so much money, not giving it to the communities, and just making themselves rich. But they've stayed in power, and it's really a cause of a lack of education in the country, which is really sad. Keep promising for better, like all politicians promise for better, and they get people to believe it. But this year's trending in the right direction. The party won, but they don't have the same percentage as they normally do. So they were just below 50%, so they didn't have the majority, and now they're gonna have to bring in another party to work with in order to control the government. So hopefully it's on its way out, from what I've learned. And yeah, it was really interesting to see how the country operates in election week, and how the electricity load shedding just stops like a few weeks before election day, and then once they're elected, you don't have electricity for 4 hours a day. Yeah, interesting stuff. And then as my research goes, I'm really just trying to read a lot of articles, and I believe I've solidified my idea onto looking into how legalizing rhino horn trade will affect private game reserves. It's a super controversial topic of whether to actually legalize international trade of rhino horn. And obviously, private reserves are dehorning these rhinos in order to protect them, but these horns are just sitting in a safe. They're not being destroyed, but they're also not being sold. And so it's why are you keeping them? Are you thinking they're gonna eventually legalize it? And if they do legalize it, these reserves can sell these rhino horn, and then be able to reinvest that money back into their reserve, increase security measures, and hopefully give more money to government reserves, because the government reserves are really where all the issues are with poaching. They don't have enough money, they don't have enough infrastructure, and it's just, there's so much land that you can't control it. Foot patrols will only protect 100,000 acres for so long, and those are just small little areas of government reserves. the whole Kruger National Park is massive. And so most of the poaching is happening in these government reserves, especially in the KwaZulu-Natal province in South Africa. And so I'd love to hopefully get in touch with some connections we have over there and learn about their situation and how they're handling it in these reserves. But yeah, the legalizing trade is super controversial, and because a lot of people believe that if you do legalize the trade, then it could, in theory, spike demand even more. When you kind of look at basic supply and demand, you're thinking if you're going to supply these rhino horn, the price will go down. It'll disincentivize poachers to come into reserves because they're potentially not making enough money to be able to risk their lives. So that's the thought of legalizing it. But then people are thinking that it will spike demand, because that's been seen in some other cases, like different kinds of like sheep's wool, or not sheep, but like animals that wool, of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's super interesting. I think it's really on the forefront of what everybody's talking about right now. And there haven't been many research articles except for ones that were maybe 5-10 years ago. So I'm kind of in one of the best reserves to do this because they've controlled their population. And they also have the best reserves and guides in the world. So I'm in a perfect spot to analyze this and hear their thoughts. And that's my plan. So over the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be working with the ranger and tracker unit and kind of hear their thoughts on it, what they think, learn about how they report rhino sightings, what they do to protect the rhinos, and how they play their part in the anti-poaching efforts. And also do some game drives, learn about the ecological effects of dehorning and how or if these rhinos' behaviors are changing due to dehorning. So that's next week. And then after that, I will be going on a hiking trip in another reserve, which will be really cool, and kind of learn how to track and that kind of stuff. 3-day camping trip in another reserve, see another reserve, learn about their anti-poaching measures, and also just see the landscape. It'll be great to get out of this area and go see another amazing part of the world. And then the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm going to be working with the anti-poaching unit here in the reserve and learn their ins and outs, learn what they're doing to protect themselves, protect the rhinos, and hear about what their thoughts are on legalizing trade. I'm having a great time, like I said earlier, and I think my research is really, if I do it properly, it's really going to help this area, and I think it could be really beneficial to a lot of people, because it's being heavily talked about and heavily debated, but there haven't really been many points of view from private game reserves and how it will help them. So yeah, that's my week 2 update, and I'll see you all next week.